My project. My project involves me looking at several different albums and focusing on how they're sequenced. Sequencing includes the first song, the last song, single placement, title track, number of songs and album length, physical album title, previous releases, and most importantly, theme and story. And theme and story paint vivid pictures within the music. My first analysis of music started when I dissected 3 different intro songs from 3 different rap albums, all released in different years, and I was surprised when I found very similar themes within them. After that, I completed my largest analysis on an album, Childish Gambino's Because the Internet. That album follows very strong themes and stories. This album was also released with a screenplay that I plan on reading. I then sent out a survey to people asking what their favorite album is, so I can expand my familiarity with different types of music. Mindfulness and confidence. Mindfulness comes from listening to what these artists had to say, using my background knowledge to connect their lyrics to events, phrases, and people, and so on and so forth. In the case of Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, which is a magnum opus of an album which critiques American capitalism and systemic racism, it's a very large hill to climb. And drawing strings to these albums isn't always easy, so I had to be confident in my ability to understand what these people were talking about and be confident in what I was saying was true. Specifically, it was difficult talking about these rappers' lyrics who talk about impoverished living and coming up in unsafe neighborhoods. But when I looked at an album like Dookie by Green Day, it's easier. That album discusses the complex theory of being a teenager. You're growing up, everything's changing, and you lose your friends and your lovers, and most importantly, you lose a bit of yourself with age. Next, I looked at singles on an album, released by different artists in the same genre in similar years. 16 out of the 40 albums I looked at had the single on the third track, or at least one of the singles. Many of that didn't land there were often right before or right after. The majority of these LPs, with one of the singles being on the third track, were released in the past 28, as opposed to many of the albums I've looked at that were released before 1993. Those albums seem to follow a format as well, often just having one single or 2 singles, one on the A side and one on the B. When I separated the albums by genre, I expect more consistency, but albums released in similar years seem to be more reliable. I then looked at simplistic albums and focused on their relevance, similarities, and purpose. These albums will have very simple covers and titles, even simple song titles. Some albums I looked at didn't even have a title or song titles on them. I also looked at skits on albums. Skits are often expressed through phone calls or voicemails. These will build on the story and can change your entire perspective on how the story of a song and the story of an album moves. I would say I improved a lot on curiosity and responsibility. Responsibility, definitely. I increased the amount and my ability to write about music and its meaning. I'm glad because it wasn't terribly difficult to work on. I worked on curiosity because I expanded my taste in music. If you asked me last year what I listened to, I would say rock, classic rock, and punk. Now I listen to rock, classic rock, and punk, new wave, shoegaze, indie, electronic, rap rock, rap and hip hop, alternative hip hop, experimental hip hop, soul, and funk. Many and many more, of course. I've been able to learn through different types of music and by proxy learn different types of perspectives. About 90% of my project has been sitting and listening. I would hear something important or interesting and think about how it would fit into my project. Something I had thought a lot about was open-mindedness. In a sense, it was my job to interpret the message of these people and convey it. And many of these people are very different from me. They've lived in different years, are part of different races, sexualities, ages, classes, and have many different experiences. Through feedback, I learned about others' perspectives on their favorite music, but when I asked why that album was their favorite, I couldn't get past, oh, every song is good, or I just like it. And that's if they responded at all. Relying on others also proved to be difficult. I would ask questions and bring up ideas that other people seemed to disregard or just ignore. So it felt like the work I was doing was not up to par. Although I know I improved by comparing the work I did last year with the work I did this year. Instead of being zapped for drive and ambition, I've written some of the best things I think I've ever written. Going with my expanded music taste, my resourcefulness has also increased. I've been able to grab similarities from several places also through curiosity. For example, when I delved into the intro to Pimp a Butterfly, Wesley's Theory by Kendrick Lamar, I learned about some Jamaican funk singer from the 70s named Boris Gardiner, political conspiracies involving Wesley Snipes, and was able to connect it to several other rap albums by The Roots and Snoop Dogg, and was able to connect it to several different artists like Dr. Dre and George Clinton. What's next? Right now, I'm not really sure. I know there's a lot of albums I would love to talk about, but the things that interest me have expanded. I've been really into films recently and wanted to pursue that further. As I grappled with this for a while, I came up with this. These albums and songs I've been talking about tell stories the way movies tell stories. So, what if that's what I did? Create short movies inspired by these albums. While I can't easily create visuals for cultural pieces like To Pimp a Butterfly, I can focus on albums that are incredibly consistent on the way they look and sound. For example, like an album like Igor by Tyler the Creator. And that's what I'm doing now, creating an audio-visual experience. I plan on using colors inspired by the giallo horror movie Suspiria by Dario Argento. He uses a lot of solid colors and mixes them in a very interesting way. This is what I've shot so far. It's been very fun and interesting, and I think next year, if I really keep this drive going, I will create something very incredible. So I hope people come along with me on my journey as I attempt to bridge the gap between these two forms of media. Thank you.